Were you drunk?
Maybe a little bit. I'm not sure.
I think we were drunk.
You say that night you interviewed Enrico Fiola.
Yes.
I was not really drinking much. I was more so the sober guy.
You could tell people are slurring their words. Their eyes are a little glossy.
I only had one beer that night.
Were you drinking beer? I had one or two.
You yourself only had one or two?
Yes.
You sure about that?
I'm positive.
And how much were you drinking?
No more than 2 beers.
Did you have 2 beers?
Yeah.
2 Bud Lights.
So you had about 2 beers maybe?
Yeah. I had a couple drinks.
3 beers. Busch Light.
How many beers did you have?
5 to 7.
I had a few beers.
You had a few beers? I did.
There was a bottle, I believe it was a bottle of whiskey, if memory serves, in the yard.
But you said you think you had 2 beers, right?
Yeah.
Just 2?
Yes.
You sure about that?
Yes.
I think we were drunk.
You had no more than 2 beers, right?
No more than 2 beers.
How do you know no more than 2?
Because I know it was no more than 2 beers.
What makes you so certain about that? No more than 2?
Because it was only 2 beers.